Well, howdy there. Me and Mary here wants to invite y'all to be watching that Chasing Legends show with your host, what's that fella's name? Tuttle? Yeah.
Hi, I'm Wayne Tuttle, and welcome back to Chasing Legends. I'll be your host yet again for today. While you're at it, please hit subscribe, hit the notifications bell so you'll always get notifications and new episodes of Chasing Legends and episodes of Legends of the Superstition Mountains. And as well, check out the link in our About page there, and you'll see that you can get the shirts, the Dutch Hunter Rendezvous and the Legend of the Superstition Mountain t-shirts. They're available in black and gray, short and long sleeve. So with all that out of the way, let's move forward. This week we're going to do a story. I do want to get back to the bark notes and stuff following up on the two soldiers story, but kind of we'll be working down to the end of the year with a lot of these different stories that touch each other. This one, there was one that I was thinking about this last week. It was probably 82 or 83. And I was coming back out. I'd been up on the north end of Bluff Springs. Something about, and it was either Richard Peck, Chuck Kenworthy, someone like that. Something about a foundation on the north end of Bluff Springs on the northeast, somewhere down. And I'd been out there. I was going to work my way back. I'd kind of wrapped up. I was coming around LaBarge, and I probably was around Holme Springs or around that area, coming back through down on the LaBarge side of Bluff Springs. And there was a guy off to the side just kind of sitting there and all. He was a Hispanic guy, about my age probably, around 20 or so. And he was very polite, hey, excuse me. And I kind of stopped, and he had his pack and everything sitting there. And he introduced himself. He said his name was Kevin. And he'd been back in the mountains for a couple days, and he was trying to orient himself to the map, where he'd been and all. He'd been camped up in Charlie Boy. And he was kind of looking at certain specific spots and areas that weren't on the map. And we talked for a few minutes, and I kind of showed him and how things were and pointed exactly where he was at and where certain aspects were. And then I remember we got ready to move on. He said, "Hey, you heading out?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm heading back out to Peralta." And he said, "Do you mind if I tag along, ask some questions?" So on the way out, we stopped by Bluff Spring. I showed him where the spring was because it's kind of overgrown there, and you got to go back through everything to get back to the pipe. And I talked a little about the history, and he was going to go out through a Miner's Needle, but I took him out through Barks and up through Cardiac on the way out because that's the way I usually go in and out through there. And for some reason, I always find it quicker. But and I like the hike better than being out in flat open. So we got back to the parking lot, talked for a few and all, and he was like, "Hey, you want to exchange numbers next time you're out if you want to go?" And he seemed, there was nothing on your radar, and seemed like a good guy. I was like, yeah, I'll let you, next time you're coming out and stuff. So a few weeks went by, and then I heard from him, and kind of like we talked, and he wanted to go out. He was kind of trying to cover a lot of area. Up by Music Mountain and LaBarge Box and Coffee Flat. And we talked for a while, and we did a trip. The next trip we did, because he wanted to go back out. He'd been out to Music Mountain. He wanted to make another trip out there. And we kind of made that trip. He was looking for some sort of trails or game trail or something. There's something specific he was looking for. He was looking for this small hole. And he said it had like wood or something, logs at the entrance, but it wasn't very big. You had to kind of almost crawl through, and it dropped down, so you had to kind of go feet first into this cave or something. And I wasn't sure if it was a mine, a cave, what we were looking for, and he talked about it here and there. So it was probably the next trip or two, because we made a couple different trips later that year. And he was one of those guys, kind of was a cool guy, fun to hike with, and all. Got around really well, and then I kind of learned the backstory. His father was Apache, and I believe Mexican. And his mother, I believe, was Yaqui and white. And his grandfather, his paternal grandfather, he'd been out on a hunting trip with his father, his uncle, who I remember his uncle's name, Sam, and his brother and some cousins. They were out hunting, and they'd been out to the Superstitions. And him and his brother were away from the group, and they were working their way down into this canyon. And they'd worked their way up because it was very shady on both sides. So they thought maybe they'd get some elevation, see some deer. Very nice, cool day. Maybe they were laying down, they were in the shade. So they worked their way up to elevate themselves, and they found this spot. And it was a hole, he said, was big enough for someone to kind of go through. It was between some rocks, and he was pretty sure it was natural, but it had logs at the opening. So he said it kind of caught their interest because these were hand-hewn like pieces of log. And he said they got down into it, and then they dropped, and it went down into a big cave, kind of a chamber, and they followed it for a ways, and then it kind of looked like it was breaking off a little, but then off to the right it turned, and they could see light. And when they came out the other side, they were literally on a different part of the mountain. And he said it was really, he felt it was a cave, but the opening had been worked, and you could actually kind of walk out. And he said he wasn't quite sure where they were. He'd talked to his dad and his uncle about it. His grandfather had said, when you were there was a place where if you went through, when you left, you should have went back. And there was a place that a hole had been dug, and there were pocket watches and all kinds of little valuables and stuff. Never was a gold store. It was always about, I guess you'd say, loot or something had been hit in this place. And he wasn't sure if it was BS, but it seemed his grandfather was telling him the true story, and he talked about it. So we searched for a number of years, I remember. And I remember certain specific things. I mean, he always referred to his father was good at two things. He was a mechanic and he was a drunk. So he didn't have much to do with his dad, but he had a lot to do because he always talked about his Uncle Sam. And he was way too old to come out with him, but he was always looking for this spot. We hit Music Mountain, we hit the LaBarge Box, we hit Coffee Flat. I know we even kind of looked around some of the LaBarge side of Bluff Springs, and nothing ever matched up. He kept coming back thinking it had to be out by Music Mountain somewhere, but none of it really he never kind of was like, there was never an aha moment. And this went on for a few years. We kind of looked and made a number of trips. And good guy. I didn't mind. His name started with a D. It was kind of Spanish. I remember the Mexican side of the family had come from Spain at one point. Anyways, we kind of stayed in touch, and then he let me know he was going to Colorado. The family, it was kind of a move thing. They were kind of his mom and his uncle and some of them, and the cousins and some family was going to Colorado. I don't know if it was a family business thing or whatever. I don't even know what he did for a living, but they went to move there. So I just didn't hear from him again. He just called to say, hey, we're moving and all this stuff. So there won't be any other trips. I probably had his address or a phone number or something, or I think he was supposed to send me his address, and I never heard back from him, just in case I ran across something to let him know. But I remember this story. You go through, down this hole, down through this tunnel, and it's kind of a natural cave, and then before you get to the end and you go to leave out, off to the left, you go over and there's some kind of hole pit, you go out. So many years go by, and I don't think much of it. It's one of those stories that you kind of spent time with someone, and you remember the campfires, you remember this person, you forget even their last name. And then Randy Wright and I went out, and we went working our way up between Palomino and Blacktop. And we got by the Caballos camp, and we're working our way up, and we started working up Blacktop from more the south side. And there was this hole, and it had this log, and it was like the log was set there to hold this boulder up. It was about this, maybe this big. And there was a hole there, and we got over, and we dropped in, had to drop in feet first, and we slid down, and it was a tunnel. And at the time, I'm not thinking about anything. I'm just thinking, oh, okay, we got in. Well, it's kind of an open chamber of a cave, and I could see it went down a ways. So we kind of worked our way down, and then it had a tunnel that went off to the left a short ways and then ended, and there was quite a bit of trash sitting there. And then the right one opened up, and you walked out, and you look out, and you were looking down in the canyon. You were at Needle Canyon, so you kind of left that over by Caballo's camp. You got inside there, and then when you came out, you were down by Needle Canyon. And I didn't think it was a very long distance, and it was kind of curious because it wasn't a mining tunnel. It was kind of a mixture of some mining mixed in with possibly a natural cave. And I left there, and after Randy and I had left, we took a number of pictures. I haven't been able to find the pictures. I got some good pictures of the outside and the exterior and a few of the interior. It was sometime later I realized that when we went in and went down the other tunnel, there was a hole in the ground where and you could actually drop down into this hole, and it had a kind of an open space. Now, whether these guys found the right place, the wrong place, their grandfather fed them BS, this mine was actually a kind of a partial mine cave dug by a man named John Pierce. And John Pierce actually mined silica out of there, we found. And it's a pretty well-known site on that side of Blacktop. He'd actually at one time proposed, and there was something of a road. Most people don't realize that coming in first water, most of those trails were at one time roads. There's a reason when you're coming down into Brush Corral Basin, it's called Transmission Gap. But that road, he was trying to get that road extended all the way through between Palomino and Blacktop so he could move the silica out and make it more profitable during that time, which was probably the 50s. I would think it was either the late 40s, early 50s. John Pierce was in there, and he passed away. A number of people have been in there, but if you're ever in there and you find the one opening, I don't know if that boulder's still being held by that piece of wood, but and if Kevin's ever out there, if he's sitting there and he catches YouTube, and if he actually happens to watch this and remember, oh, I remember that guy, I'm pretty sure that was the spot. Now, I went back later and kind of messed around. If there was something, if that was the hole and there was something in there, someone got it, moved it out. But there's a number of stories attached to Blacktop. That's also the place where they found the remains of Adolph Ruth. It's where some of what they call the Spanish markings are up on there, but they're actually basically petroglyphs up on the top there. But a lot of history, a lot around Blacktop. But that's my story for this week, Kevin and the John Pierce mine, which I think I resolved, and I'm pretty sure I'm resolved. It's too bad. I never thought about taking him on the other side of the mountains, but he was adamant. He was sure. He was very sure that this tunnel was on the eastern side of Bluff Springs. And everything about his story and him and his brother walking down between two hills and down this little canyon and climbing up and then finding this hole in the wood and then going through and then coming out into this other canyon, almost every aspect of the story fits the Pierce mine almost to a T. So there you go. Another story, another time, another place. Join us again next week for another episode of Chasing Legends. I'm Wayne Tuttle, and enjoy your Thanksgiving. We'll catch you next week.
Safety check. All good. See you on the next episode. Adios. I know we're going. Come on. Hip, hip. Hip, hip. Hip, hip. No, not me, you. Come on. Hip, hip. Hip, hip. Hip, hip. Wait a minute. I need a jump. Get on the backside. Need a jump. All right, another thing. Get a bribe them.
How do you usually get her started?
Wait a minute. Me and Mary here will see you on the next episode.
Well, we can do it again. It's all right.
Hey guys, this is Hollywood.
Now you know why they put me on History Channel and not you. All right, here we go.
Howdy there. Me and Mary here, and the mule.
Drinking first thing in the morning.
Here we go. Ready?
All right, we got it.
Well, me and Mary here are going to invite you back for the next exciting episode of what's the name of that show, Mary? Huh? What is it? Tell me.
Gone with the Wind.
Oh yeah. What is it? I forgot. Well, howdy folks. We gotta leave now, me and Mary here, but I want you to stay tuned for the next exciting adventure of chasing legends. Adios. Hup, hup. Come on, Mary. Come on, Mary. Let's go. Hup, hup.
Mary. I don't blame you. I wouldn't push you.
Hup, hup.
Let me smack her from behind.
Give me a push. I need a
Come
jump.
on, Mary. Come
I need
on.
a jump.
Come on, Mary.
There we go. Audio.
Damn, that was worth every minute of it, wasn't it? Don't quit now, Mary.